I try to be true to myself. Of course, I've made hiccups along the way, but I will own my hiccups. I will own my mistakes and keep going.
That's the kind of energy Naomi Campbell has always carried. Not just a model, an icon, a walking contradiction of elegance and controversy. A girl abandoned at birth who became the face of global beauty. A supermodel whose beauty turned heads, but whose battles, both public and private, shattered illusions. This is not just a story about fashion. It's about survival, legacy, and rising from chaos to become a queen. Naomi Campbell is one of the very few women in history who can be called a true supermodel, not an Instagram face, not a runway filler. We're talking about that elite league from the 90s, the ones whose names were spoken like royalty: Linda, Cindy, Claudia, Christy, and then Naomi. But her story begins far from flashing cameras and red carpets. Naomi Elaine Campbell was born on May 22, 1970, in South London. Her mother, Valerie Morris, was a Jamaican-born dancer. Her father, a complete ghost. He abandoned her mother before Naomi was even born, and per her mother's wishes, Naomi has never met him. His name isn't even on her birth certificate. Naomi's childhood was unstable, uprooted constantly as her mother toured Europe with a dance troupe. Naomi spent her early years in Rome and later in London, mostly living with relatives. The absence of her mother during crucial years left an emotional scar she'd later describe as abandonment. But even in pain, Naomi found expression. She wasn't just pretty, she was born to perform. By age 3, she was studying ballet at the Barbara Speake Stage School. By 10, she got accepted into the prestigious Italia Conti Academy of Theatre Arts, and by 13, she was determined to make her mark. At 15, fate came calling in the form of Beth Bolt, the head of the Synchro model agency. Naomi was simply window shopping in Covent Garden when she was scouted. Her mother was skeptical. She'd sacrificed so much for Naomi's education and feared con artists, but Naomi had already decided she was going to model. She snuck off for a photo session with Bolt and returned with her first professional black and white shots. Just months before turning 16, she landed the cover of British Elle. The industry hadn't seen anything like her. No formal runway training, didn't matter. Naomi used her dance background to craft what would become one of the most iconic walks in fashion history. Fierce, feminine, unapologetically bold. She didn't just walk for designers, she owned them. Gianni Versace, Azzedine Alaïa, Isaac Mizrahi, and soon she was posing for the likes of Peter Lindbergh, Herb Ritts, and Bruce Weber. She wasn't breaking into the fashion world. She was bulldozing the doors down. It was during this time that Naomi joined forces with Christy Turlington and Linda Evangelista. Together, they were dubbed the Trinity, a trio that redefined what it meant to be a supermodel. They weren't just models, they were the moment. They turned fashion shows into global events, and they had each other's backs. When Naomi faced racial discrimination, a regular occurrence in an industry that worshipped pale, blonde beauty, it was Christy and Linda who stepped up. Once, when Dolce & Gabbana hesitated to book Naomi, they reportedly told the designers, "If you don't use Naomi, you don't get us." That kind of loyalty changed the game, and so did Naomi. In 1987, she became the first black woman on the cover of British Vogue since 1966. In 1988, she made history again, gracing the cover of French Vogue, thanks to pressure from designer Yves Saint Laurent, who threatened to pull advertising if they didn't feature her. She shattered the ceilings, not just one, but all of them. And yet, behind the perfect walk and polished skin was still the girl who had grown up alone, still searching for protection, stability, and peace. She was fighting for success, but also for visibility. In an industry that often sidelined black women, Naomi didn't just want to be seen, she demanded it. Naomi Campbell's power wasn't just in her stride or her bone structure. It was in how she treated beauty like warfare, discipline, ritual, and rebellion. She didn't let the world define her image. She built it herself. While many assumed her looks were simply genetic luck, Naomi worked hard to preserve the appearance the world idolized. She had rules, strict ones, and she followed them without fail. Her skincare routine was closer to a spiritual practice. Cleansing cream, a hint of liquid soap, vitamin C, rose oil, each step designed to keep her glow alive. She never slept with makeup on, no matter how tired she was. Even when flying first class, she refused plain food and wiped down every surface with disinfectant. Germs weren't allowed near her skin, neither were heavy creams, only light layers. And while others piled on foundation, Naomi would skip it entirely on her forehead, wanting her skin to breathe. Her goal was to feel effortless while still commanding attention. It worked. Food, too, was treated like strategy. Though she joked about eating KFC and pizza, her real habits were closer to that of an athlete. She avoided dairy, gluten, and chicken. Her diet was largely pescatarian. She didn't drink coffee, couldn't even stand the smell of it. She started her mornings with hot water, lemon, and probiotics. Every month, she'd commit to juice cleanses just to hit the reset button. Sleep was sacred. She'd often choose it over dinner. Naomi never claimed to be perfect, only that she knew what worked for her. She didn't wait for the beauty industry to catch up to her. Many makeup artists in the 90s had no idea how to work with black skin. Naomi solved that by bringing her own products to shoots. She became her own makeup artist when she had to, because being prepared wasn't a preference. It was survival. Being black in fashion wasn't just about showing up. It was about showing up and fixing everyone else's mistakes before they ruined the shot. And still, even after all that, she wasn't paid like her white peers. She was at the top of her game, recognizable across continents, but wasn't booked for the same level of ad campaigns or cosmetic contracts. It wasn't until 1999, when she signed with Cosmopolitan Cosmetics, that she finally landed a beauty deal. For comparison, her white counterparts had signed theirs years earlier. And in her own words, "I may be considered one of the top models in the world, but in no way do I make the same money as any of them." She said it bluntly, and she kept saying it. Her words mattered, because she wasn't just talking about herself. Naomi knew that every time she broke through a barrier, she cracked it open for someone else. But carrying that weight came with pressure, and sometimes isolation. The glamour of supermodel life often hid the loneliness. You fly city to city, everyone wants you, but no one's really with you. And for Naomi, that ache went back to childhood. No father, no mother on tour, no one consistently there. So when she finally broke down, it wasn't shocking, it was inevitable. The public first started noticing her erratic behavior during interviews and backstage moments. Then came the feud that would shape years of headlines: Naomi Campbell versus Tyra Banks. It wasn't just two models with strong personalities. It was painted as a battle for the throne. Tyra claimed Naomi bullied her at Paris Fashion Week, told her she'd never make it, even tried to trip her on the runway. Naomi denied the details, but the rift was undeniable. The media latched on, fans picked sides, and while Tyra publicly spoke about the emotional toll, Naomi often remained silent, further fueling the mystery around her character. Years later, in a televised sit-down, they addressed the feud face to face. What surfaced wasn't just rivalry, it was pain. Naomi admitted she envied Tyra for always having her mother present. That simple contrast, a girl with a parent backstage versus a girl flying solo through the chaos of fashion weeks, highlighted the deeper wound. Naomi wasn't just reacting to Tyra, she was reacting to the entire life she had to endure alone. Then came the addictions. Naomi revealed that she started using substances in 1994, around the time she was at the peak of her fame. What began as a form of escape soon spiraled into dependency. By the end of the decade, her career was being overshadowed by rumors of drug use, fainting spells, and missed jobs. In 1999, she entered rehab, battling cocaine and alcohol. She didn't sugarcoat it. She'd collapsed during a job. Her body had finally said no. From that point on, she began the slow process of recovery, publicly and painfully. She told Oprah that her addiction wasn't just about the pressure of modeling. It was about abandonment, trauma, the emotional debris she never had time to clean up. And through all of that, the fame, the fall, the slow climb back, she stayed visible, she stayed relevant. When everyone expected her to disappear, Naomi refused, because disappearing would mean they won. There was a time when the name Naomi Campbell evoked not awe, but headlines about violence, courtrooms, and chaos. Her beauty had once been the conversation. Now, it was the bruises, the broken phones, the apologies. Between 1998 and 2009, Naomi was accused of assault 11 times and convicted 4. Her temper, once written off as fiery and fierce, became dangerous, documented in court filings, police reports, and community service photographs. And yet, the full truth, like Naomi herself, was never just one thing. It began in 2000, when she pled guilty to throwing a phone at her personal assistant during an argument. She attended anger management and issued a public apology, but that was just the start. In 2006, 8 more employees, housekeepers, assistants, stylists, came forward describing incidents where Naomi had allegedly hurled objects, shouted threats, or physically lashed out. That same year, she was famously photographed wearing a shirt that read, "Naomi hit me, and I loved it." The media laughed. She didn't. By 2007, she was back in court, this time for assaulting another housekeeper with a BlackBerry. She pled guilty again. The punishment: 5 days of community service with New York's sanitation department. But even that turned into a media spectacle. Naomi completed her sentence wearing designer sunglasses, fitted coats, and a sequined Dolce & Gabbana gown. Paparazzi swarmed her like it was Fashion Week. Critics accused her of glamorizing punishment. Others saw it as her way of reclaiming the narrative, controlling the lens that once condemned her. Then came Heathrow Airport. 2008. A luggage dispute escalated. Police intervened. Naomi kicked one officer, spat on another. She was arrested and later sentenced to 200 hours of community service, fined, and permanently banned from British Airways. Still, she returned to the spotlight. Still, she booked jobs. Still, she walked like she owned the earth. But beneath that unshaken posture was a complicated truth. Naomi never denied she had anger problems. She didn't hide behind PR teams or silence. In interviews, she admitted she often saw red, that when she lost control, it wasn't planned, but instant. And behind that rage was something deeper: hurt, loneliness, the need to protect herself in an industry that gave her power, but not always love. In one rare moment of emotional clarity, she broke down on Oprah, apologizing to her mother for the years of estrangement. Her mother, in turn, admitted she felt she'd abandoned Naomi by leaving her so young. They cried, they forgave, but the wounds were never just personal, they were generational. Then came the scandal that no one could defend. In 2010, Naomi was called to testify at the war crimes trial of former Liberian President Charles Taylor. The charge? He had given her blood diamonds, illegally mined gems used to fund brutal wars that killed thousands. The alleged handoff happened in 1997 during a charity event hosted by none other than Nelson Mandela. Naomi didn't want to testify. She called it a major inconvenience. But when subpoenaed, she appeared visibly annoyed and said 2 unknown men delivered dirty-looking stones to her hotel room. She claimed she didn't know who they were from. The next morning, she said, actress Mia Farrow told her they were from Charles Taylor, but that story didn't match Farrow's, or her former agents, or the charity directors. The contradictions made headlines. So did her demeanor: cold, short, defensive, and in the eyes of many, guilty, not of the crime itself, but of lacking empathy. For a woman who had raised millions for African causes, the irony was loud. Blood diamonds weren't just illegal, they were soaked in human suffering. And while Naomi wasn't charged with anything, her involvement, even as a recipient, tarnished the image she had tried to restore. She became a symbol not of fashion, but of complicity. And for once, even her most loyal fans struggled to look away. But the worst wasn't over. In the years that followed, new headlines surfaced, ones more sinister, more difficult to forgive. Naomi's name appeared not in a fashion magazine, but in the unsealed flight logs of Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex trafficker, whose crimes sent shockwaves through every corner of power and celebrity. The records showed Naomi had flown on Epstein's private jet, the infamous Lolita Express, multiple times. She had attended his parties. Her contact details appeared in his black book. Naomi denied any involvement in his crimes. She said she had no knowledge of what he was doing. On her own YouTube channel, she insisted she was being dragged into something she had nothing to do with. But the internet didn't forget. Questions lingered. Why was she on the plane? What did she know? Who introduced them? For many, the damage was already done. Even if she was innocent, she had been close, too close. And in a world where guilt by association spreads fast, Naomi's reputation took another brutal blow, and yet she remained standing. The scandals tried to define her, the fashion world tried to cancel her, but Naomi Campbell refused to disappear. And instead of retreating into silence, she chose something else: transformation. Not the kind you can buy or brand, but the kind that comes from pain, reflection, and rebuilding your life brick by brick. For all her controversies, Naomi's heart for charity never wavered. Long before it became trendy for celebrities to attach themselves to causes, she was organizing fashion shows for disaster relief and traveling to countries devastated by war, disease, and poverty. In 1998, she staged a Versace show at Nelson Mandela's presidential residence in South Africa. It wasn't just a publicity stunt, it was personal. Mandela had called Naomi his honorary granddaughter. He saw in her a rare combination of fire and loyalty, and she responded by dedicating her time, platform, and money to his foundation for children. She didn't stop there. Naomi created the charity We Love Brazil in 2005, helping raise awareness and income for impoverished women through fabric design and craft. Her other initiative, fashion for relief, raised millions for global catastrophes, from Hurricane Katrina to the Haiti earthquake, the Syrian refugee crisis, and more. Naomi didn't just post hashtags, she got on planes, spoke on stages, and wore her compassion on couture sleeves. In 2009, Trinity College Dublin awarded her honorary patronage, not for modeling, but for her contribution to humanitarian work. And in 2010, the British edition of Elle magazine gave her the Outstanding Contribution Award, specifically citing her ambassadorship for the White Ribbon Alliance. Naomi's second act wasn't just about staying relevant. It was about giving back what fame had taken from her, purpose. And yet, despite all the red carpets and awards, there was always a missing piece, a quiet longing. For years, Naomi had expressed her desire to become a mother. She'd seen friends and peers start families, watched generations pass under her watchful gaze, and still, she waited. In May 2021, at the age of 50, Naomi shocked the world by announcing the birth of her daughter. A year later, she confirmed in Vogue that her child had not been adopted, but born via surrogate. In 2023, she welcomed a second baby, this time a boy. She posted about them with reverence. She didn't sell their photos to tabloids or monetize their existence. She protected their privacy, maybe because she knew too well what it felt like to be unprotected, alone, abandoned. Now she could offer someone the safety she never had. Her motherhood was her redemption arc. It wasn't loud, it wasn't scandalous. It just was, and it allowed people to see Naomi not just as a model, not just as a firebrand, but as a woman who had evolved, a woman who had stumbled, publicly and painfully, but got back up every time. That's the thing about Naomi. You can throw stones at her, some literal, some metaphorical, and she'll still show up in heels. She'll still take the runway. She'll still pose for Vogue covers and Met Gala photos and beauty campaigns. Because to her, survival isn't passive. It's an active rebellion, a choice made every morning to not be defined by the worst moments of your life. Critics still exist. Some will never forgive her court cases, her rage, her proximity to dangerous men. And that's fair. But if we only judged people by their worst decisions, most of us wouldn't make it past page 1. Naomi's story is not one of innocence. It's one of complexity, of trauma, of grace met with grit. She once said, "I'm not proud of everything I've done, but I am trying to be a better person. I want peace." And that's all you really need to understand her. Naomi Campbell was thrown into the darkest corners of fame at 15. She was exploited, idolized, criticized, and abandoned. She clawed her way through addiction, scandal, and industry betrayal. And in the end, she didn't just survive it, she outlived it. Naomi Campbell didn't follow the rules. She didn't beg for acceptance. She carved her own path, sometimes too recklessly, sometimes too fiercely, but always with the eyes of the world watching. And now, after decades of walking through storms, she stands at the top, not untouched, not perfect, but still standing, still a queen. So what do you think? Was Naomi Campbell simply a product of her environment, a broken girl thrust into a brutal industry? Or is her story a cautionary tale of fame, power, and fallout? Either way, you can't deny she changed the face of fashion forever. And no matter what the headlines say, her walk still echoes through history. If you made it this far, drop a crown in the comments to show love for the queen herself. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the legends, the scandals, and the truth behind the fame. Until next time, stay curious.